Hello, I'm Nancy with Supply New England, and today I'm going to be talking about sizing expectations, sizing mini splits, and setting expectations for our homeowners. Before we do that though, let's talk about the advantages of a ductless heat pump system. My personal favorite is what I refer to as micro zoning, allowing each room in the environment to be at a separate temperature. For example, let's say that we have grandma over. Maybe she's on blood thinners, she has thinner skin, she's very sensitive to temperature, and we need to keep her comfortable. Because at the end of the day, isn't that really what we do? We provide comfort. Not necessarily heating or cooling, we provide comfort. So let's keep her comfortable. And then we have mom and dad. They're in the exercise room and they're working out, they're all hot and sweaty. So let's cool them off, and they're going to have a cooler temperature. And we got the kids, they're in their bedrooms, doing their homework, gaming, whatever it is they're doing, but they have a different temperature in those rooms. With a ductless mini split, each room can be at its own temperature, which is pretty cool. What they can't do is have one room in heating while the other one is cooling. But that's okay, because they can't do that now, so they're used to that. kW. Electric heat is considered to be 100% efficient. You pay for 1 kW of electricity, you get 1 kW of heat. 100% efficient. On a mini split, however, it could be 3 times as much of that. You could pay for 1 kW of electricity and get 3 kWs of heat out of that. The key to remember, guys, is I said up to. Make sure you're checking your submittals on the equipment that you're installing to know exactly what you're going to get there. I found this really cool tool on the Massive site called the Residential Heating Comparison Calculator. Highly recommend that you go on there and get familiar with it. It's a pretty cool tool. In this case, using the tool, I put a home in Attleboro, Mass. Small home, 1,300 square feet, hot water boiler, pretty common, right? Oil boiler. They're spending approximately $2,000 a year to heat their home. In the program, once we tell the system what's going on, we click the next. Now we can see that if we were to choose that our ductless heat pump is going to be our primary source of heat, on average, they're going to save $234. Now, I really don't like to get into exactly how much they're going to save, to be honest with you, because each home is slightly different. I just like to let them know they're going to have a savings. The real thing here, guys, is look at this. Their carbon emissions. We're going to save over 2 metric tons of carbon emissions just by changing to this ductless heat pump system. And yes, they did take in consideration how the electricity was being generated. Even with that, it's over 2 tons of emissions that is being saved. The next portion of it gives us our return on investment, which is pretty cool. So we can see on that ductless heat pump system, the average cost of install is anywhere between $8,400 to $11,400. They're going to get a $10,000 rebate, as long as everybody's done everything that is required. How long is it going to take to get their money back? Sometimes instantaneously, sometimes up to 6 years. Even if it's up to 6 years, I think that's pretty good return on investment. Don't you? Now let's talk sizing. And I'm not talking about the physical dimensions of a unit. I'm talking about the capacity. How much heating and air conditioning can the system provide us in our environment and our home? Over the years, there's been many rules of thumb used to size heating and air conditioning systems. On the heating side, 50 BTUs per square foot, 30 BTUs per square foot, or my favorite is the fingers. You sit across the street, you close one eye. How many fingers does it take to cover the home? 3 fingers? That's a street section boiler. There you go. On the AC side, 400 square feet per ton, 600 square feet per ton, or my favorite is this Manual E First Edition. It was a handout and it had cutouts, the larger cutouts to smaller cutouts. You sit exactly 103 feet away from the environment. You closed your left eye, not your right eye, the left one. Held the paper exactly 12 inches away from your right eye. Where did the home fit? If it fit into the 3-ton home cutout, that was the size system that you were going to get. Now, I've seen a lot of mistakes lately using that 600 square feet per ton rule to size AC, thinking that it's going to cover the heating load. I can tell you, I can almost guarantee that's not going to cover the heating load. Rules of thumb may have worked for you for all these years. The reality is they really haven't. Each home has its own size thumb. The only way to do this is to properly do this with a manual J. There are a lot of programs out there. We here at Supply New England use a WriteSoft program. Find a program that you like and use that. All programs are going to require the same information. Weather location. Where is the house located? Down on the Cape? Up in northern Mass? Out in western Mass? There's all kinds of different environments. So we have to know what is the outdoor condition. That's for our weather location. Compass direction of the home. Are the long sides of the home on the north and the south, or the east and the west? What is the R values of the insulation in the walls, the floors, and the ceilings? What are your window types? Single pane, two pane, low E, argon, reflective? What are the compass directions? Are the windows on the north and south, or the east and the west? If there's ductwork, where is it located? Is it in the attic? Is it in the basement? Maybe it's in the conditioned space. The size and the shape of the home. Now size, that's pretty easy. Everybody knows size is going to affect it. But did you know that there's a difference between a single-story home and a two-story home? We're going to be looking at that in a little bit. So I just want you to think about that. Then we have our landscaping features. Are there trees? Maybe the trees are nice and tall trees and they're blocking the sun from getting into our windows, blocking that heat gain. So we got that to consider. And then of course the overall efficiency of the home. How well is it insulated? How tight is the home? How much infiltration is coming into the home? All of those things need to be taken in consideration. Let's start with our indoor design temperatures. In the wintertime, we design to 70-degree indoor temperature. In the summertime, 75-degree indoor temperature. Sometimes your homeowners go, nope, not going to happen. I want it warmer in this wintertime and cooler in the summertime. But by code, guys, we're not allowed to do that. So what we really need to do is control the humidity. And that's how we're going to be able to keep them comfortable at 75 degrees. If we can get that 75 degrees and 50% humidity, they're going to be more comfortable than they would be if it was 68 degrees and kind of cold and clammy in the environment. So let's make sure we're controlling the humidity. Now remember, an oversized system will cool so quickly that it will not dehumidify. So it's going to be cold and clammy. So even at 68 degrees, we may still have 60% humidity, and that doesn't feel very good. An undersized system is going to make a great dehumidification system, but not a very good air conditioning system. And that's why proper sizing is key. Now let's look at our outdoor design conditions. Our home is here in Woburn. These dark blues that you're seeing here, that is what WriteSoft has for design towns. So our closest town is Lawrence, Mass. In Lawrence, the high in the summer is 88, and the low in the winter is 9. So that's what we're going to be designing around. Based on that information, at 9 degrees outdoors, 70 degree indoor, our heating BTU requirements is 43,980. Based on 75 degree indoor, 88 degree outdoor temperature, our cooling numbers, we have two of them. They're called latent and sensible. And we'll be talking about the difference of those later on. Our sensible needs are 26,625, and our latent needs are 4,560. And that's what we're going to be starting with. This is our home. It's about a 2,500 square foot home, 2 stories, living area on the first floor, 4 bedrooms on the second floor. So that means that we have 5 people in this environment. We're starting with north is to our right. That's where we're getting our original numbers. So our windows are on the east and the west. Just changing our compass direction, and that's all I did, was change compass direction to north facing up. So now our windows are on the north and the south side of the environment. By doing that, we lowered our cooling BTUs by over 5,000 BTUs. And our heating BTUs were also affected, almost 1,000 BTUs lower. The size and the shape of the home. Remember I told you we were going to be doing this. I took that same 2-story home and made it into a single-story home. And look what happens. We're changing and increasing our heating loads by almost 4,000 BTUs and our cooling load by over 900 BTUs. Now, why did that happen? Well, let's stop and think about it. What really happened is we doubled the floor space that was adjacent to a non-conditioned basement, and we doubled our ceiling space that was adjacent to a non-conditioned attic, and that's where those loads are coming from. Now our duct location. In our original design, it's a single system with 2 zones, one in the basement, one in the attic. We have our second floor duct is in the attic, the first floor is in our basement. and that's what our original numbers come from. Just moving our first floor duct to the attic increases our heating load by over 6,000 BTUs and our cooling load by over 5,000 BTUs. Yes, I did put it as R8 insulation, tight duct. No matter what we do, there is going to be some heat loss and heat gain in an attic duct system. Putting the duct into a conditioned space, and look what happens. We decreased our heating load by almost 6,000 BTUs and our cooling load by over 5,000 BTUs. So make sure that you're putting your duct in the correct location if you have duct. Don't forget about your internal loads. A lot of people forget about these. You got to remember, we're in the digital age now. So we got a TV or a computer or a gaming system in almost every room of the house. So we have to make sure that that's being taken in consideration. It's one of the reasons I like BrightSoft. It allows us to do that. And then we've got our kitchen. Our kitchen gives off a lot of both latent and sensible heat. In addition to that, we have the exhaust fan. So all of these things need to be taken in consideration. By removing the internal loads, look what happened. We changed our heating BTUs. Not a lot, but some. Look what happened to our sensible though, guys. We took our sensible from 26,625 all the way down to 17,885. That's a huge difference, guys. So we got to be careful with that. We affected our latent as well. We went from 4560 down to 3346. So make sure you're taking those internal loads into consideration. Now keys. The first key about remaining comfortable, as I said before, is controlling humidity. A natural byproduct of air conditioning is dehumidification. And that's where our next manual comes into play. It's called the Manual S. The Manual S uses our exact locations, our exact design conditions, to tell us how our system is going to perform in that location. It's called the Manual S because AHRI is rated on 95-degree outdoor temperature. We've already learned that in Laurel's Mass, that is not our design temperature. It's only 88 degrees. So let's see what our system will do at 88 degrees. But before we do that, we need to learn the difference between what's called the sensible heat and the latent heat and how it affects our system. Sensible is just that, something that can be sensed. Using a thermometer, you can touch it, you can feel it. It's a measurable difference. Sensible. Then we have latent heat. That's not as easy to describe. It's referred to as hidden heat. So if we have a glass of ice water on the table, the ice is 32 degrees and the water is 32 degrees. The difference between the two is we have removed the latent heat from the water in order to make ice. It takes a lot of energy to do that. So that's why it's important that we keep an eye out for our latent capacity of our system and in our environment. Let's think about that. If we had a 75-degree day in April with 50% humidity, we're doing the happy dance, right? Oh, this is a beautiful day. Oh, I'm so comfortable. I love this. Take that same 75-degree day in June, July, 90% humidity. Does that feel the same? That would be a big fat no. Why? Because of the latent heat, the hidden heat. For this scenario, we're going to be looking at a 3-ton UltraHeat multi-zone system. This is a modulating system. It will modulate between 8,871 BTUs to 40,000 BTUs in the cooling mode and 8,871 BTUs in the heating mode, all the way up to 42,514. Let's see what our system will do in our application. So in this case, we're going to be looking at 86 degrees outdoor temperature and 73 degree indoor temperature, because that's the closest I have available on this submittal sheet. When we look at this, we'll see that there's two numbers, a TC, which is your total cooling capacity, and then an SHC, which is your sensible heat capacity. And then the difference between the two would be what we have left over for our latent capacity. So in this case, we have a total capacity of 34,632 cooling BTUs. Our sensible capacity is 27,166, and that leaves 7,466 BTUs left over to handle our latent load. So let's see if this works for our home. The total capacity of the system is 34,632. We only need 31,185. We're covered. Sensible capacity, 27,166. We only need 26,625. Latent capacity of the system is 7,466. We only need 4,566. So does this system work for the cooling side of our home? Yeah, it works. This is where some people make their mistake. Oh, it works, this is what I'm going to install. Forgetting to check the extended data on the heating side. So let's take a look at that. In this case, it's pretty easy to see that it's just not going to cover our load. The maximum capacity of this system is 42,514. We need 43,980. So does it work for our heating needs? No, it doesn't work. But it's close. Or is it? I'm guessing you know by now that I wouldn't ask that question if it did. So let's take a look at why. So back to our extended data, but this time on our heating side. At 10 degrees, 73-degree indoor, because again, that's the closest I can get to our designs, this system provides us 39,091 heating BTUs. That's really good for a 3-ton system, but it's not good enough for our home. So it's not going to work. Let's take it up a notch. Let's look at that 3.5-ton ultra heat system now. Cooling load, 40,404. That's what it can give us. So let's see if it works for our environment. So it can give us 40,404. We only need 31,185. We're good. It can give us 31,694 sensible. We only need 26,625. We're good. Latent capacity, 8,710. We only need 4,560. So does this work for our system? Yep, it works. But right about now, you guys are saying, Nancy, you told me not to oversize. Oversize is bad, right? It is. Thing to remember though, guys, modulation. This unit will modulate all the way down to 8,871 cooling BTUs. So does it work for our system? It works, and it works really well because we're going to be on lower modulation most of the time, and that's where we really experience our energy savings. So the AC works. What about the heat? Okay, so in this case, at 10 degrees, we have the capacity of 43,995. We need 43,980. So does this work for our home? Yeah, it works. Right about now, you guys are saying, no way, I'm not going to do it. That's a little too close for comfort. But there's some things that we need to remember. First, every program, and some of them don't want to admit this to us, but they have some fudge factor in there. The next thing we have to remember is the 1% rule. That temperature only happens 1% of the year. The 1% rule means that of the 8,760 hours there is in a year, it only fell to 9 degrees in Lawrence, Mass. For 87 hours. I am who I am, so I went to weatherspark.com, and I found that in 2022, it fell below 9 degrees 3 times. And those 3 times were for very short periods of time. And in 2021, it only happened 2 times. Does it make sense for us to size the system larger than we need for something that's only going to happen 2 to 3 times a year for very short periods of time? I don't think it does. We have to learn to trust the manual J and the manual S. They really do work when performed correctly. Remember, garbage in, garbage out. Good information in, good information out. Now the second key. We have to educate the end user on how to use a heat pump. They really do need to know. There is a difference on how to use a heat pump in a traditional forced air system. First, you've got to get them to stop looking at that number. And I know that's a difficult thing to do. Did you know in Europe, they don't even have numbers on their thermostats? Just colder and warmer. Because our brain gets fixated on that number. I'm comfortable at 68, so I have to have it 68 in my environment. The reality is that's not true. 75 can be and is very comfortable at 75 degrees and 50% humidity. And that's the key again. We have to control the humidity. We also have to remind them that no 2 thermostats or thermometers are going to read the same. So please don't take that dollar store thermometer and compare it to what's happening on the system. It's just don't look, just feel. How do they feel? And that's what we got to get them used to doing. Well, it's true on a traditional system that you can save money by setting back your thermostats. It is not true on a mini split, and we have to make sure they know that. We want it to set it and forget it, or cruise control. Those are 2 terms that you should get used to and use them with your homeowners. We all know that we get better gas mileage when you're using cruise control. Now, the exception to this rule, because there's always an exception, as we all know, when they're going to be gone for a few days, that's when they can change that thermostat by a few degrees. Some of the things that we need to do is inform our homeowners of how the system works. The fan on auto, for example. They are used to a traditional forced air system where the fan comes on when there's a call for heat or air conditioning, and the fan goes off when the call for heat or air conditioning is satisfied. Not true on a mini split. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is we want to keep that air circulating to make sure the temperature is even throughout the room. And the second is that there is a thermistor on the unit that is actually sensing the temperature, and that is what is controlling when the system comes on and off. That's why we have the fan. And what's going to happen here is as the temperature is further away from our set temperature, the fan will speed up, and so will the outdoor unit. As the temperature gets closer to our set temperature, the fan will slow down, and so will the outdoor unit. Part of the modulation, and that's how it works. If we were to talk to the homeowner, like about a car, they're very used to car and gas mileage. So driving their old system was like driving their car in the city, but worse. They're at a stoplight, the light turns green, they pedal to the metal and they peel out and they're leaving rubber behind, and then they get to the next red light, shoving on the brake, leaving the rest of the tire behind. We all know that that's not a very efficient way to drive our cars. It's also not good for the mechanics of our car. The same is true of an air conditioning system. We don't like to do that. We want cruise control, low, steady run cycles. By doing that, we're going to lengthen the life expectancy of the system, and we're going to improve the overall efficiency. So again, cruise control, set it and forget it. Teach them to use their blinds. Close the blinds in the summertime. Keep the sun outside. Keep that heat out where it belongs and the cold inside where it belongs. In the wintertime, just the opposite. Open the blinds. Let the heat in. Let that sun help us warm our home. By doing that, we're lessening the load on the equipment, improving our overall efficiency, and again, the life expectancy of the unit. Make sure they understand that these systems need to be professionally maintained. Not by their kid that's in the high school program, not by their neighbor who's dabbling in HVAC, but by a qualified professional, somebody like you guys. That's why you're here. When we're there, we're going to be doing some things. We're going to be checking, make sure the indoor fan is clean. You know, those things are full, those are scoops, right? And if your scoops are full of debris, it can't scoop and move the air. So we're going to make sure that that's clean. We're going to check the filters, make sure the filters are clean. We're going to look at the indoor and the outdoor coils, clean them if they need to be. We're going to check that refrigerant line, make sure that nobody's kinked the line, that the weed whacker hasn't got there, cut off our insulation, that nothing's been destroyed or disturbed. We're going to make sure we're going to be checking for any signs of oil near our fittings to make sure that the unit doesn't have any leaks. And then we're going to put a condensate tablet in there to clean our drain lines. I like to put my condensate tablet on the opposite end of where my drain is, and that way as the condensate tablet melts, it's working that entire drain line all the way through the pan and into the drain hose itself. And then we're going to be looking at the electrical components. We're going to watch out for Willard, Rocky, and Hissy. In case you haven't heard about them, Willard is my pet mouse, Rocky is my pet squirrel, and Hissy is my pet snake. I consider them job security, but they're really bad for our systems. So we're going to be watching out for these guys. We're going to be looking at our electric components, be checking our wires for anything that may be starting to get, a little bit deteriorated or anything like that. We're going to keep those in there, make sure everything is nice and clean. We're going to check those EEVs. That's actually where I see a lot of the issues are. So I like to take my EEV coils off, get in there with my wire brush, clean them if they're dirty, wipe them off, and then put them back into place. And that's important to do. According to Mass Save, they can save up to 30% of their electric costs going from a traditional air conditioning system to a mini split. But if they don't maintain it, it's going to cost them 25%. They're losing most of their benefits. So really, let's make sure that they're maintaining their systems. The homeowners, they can do things too. Make sure that they're keeping their filters clean. The outdoor unit, checking it, maybe in the fall, make sure that the leaves aren't building up around it. And when there's pollen in the spring, if it's starting to build up on the back of the unit, have them shut it off. And I like to tell them to just rinse off the coil, rinse from the fan side backwards. Don't use the word spray because we don't want them spraying, just rinsing. And then make sure that they understand that snow removal may be a part of this new system. Because yes, we have them up, but there are snow drifts that can build up. These units need to breathe. So we need to make sure that the unit has plenty of air around it. So they may need to shovel around it once in a while. And then we need to let them know. It's not a matter of if the unit's going to get ice on it, it's a matter of when it's going to get ice on it. And that's a normal thing to do. They need to know the difference though. If it's a little bit of ice, that's normal. The unit will go through a defrost cycle. Each system defrosts slightly differently, so we're not going to really get into that algorithm. But if they see an ice buildup on it like that, then it's time to call somebody. The professional needs to come out and take a look at what's going on. Traditionally, I find that that's normally a leak in the system somewhere. And then we need to let them know about that temperature display. They're used to seeing two numbers on their thermostats, their set temperature and the temperature of the room. Well, in this case, on a mini split, for the most part, what they're going to see is the set temperature. So make sure that they know that's what they're looking at, is their set temperature. Some people can't sleep with any lights on. What I would recommend is we shut the light off. Not every manufacturer has that option, so before you say that to your homeowner, make sure that you know what your system can do. If you have any questions on the presentation, please feel free to contact your local Supply New England branch. Be happy to answer any of your questions. And for myself, Nancy Imhoff, and the entire Supply New England team, thank you very much.